slowly, I'm slowly, getting things moving on that list, recognizing that we can't do everything at the same time. Sam has offered to talk with me about how we might um, make that list more shareable and think about it, and I'll be talking with him about that. But there are some things on it that will require more effort. For example, revising our bylaws, which is something we really do need to do. So look for things to occur this year, either as individuals. Some things will happen through email. Some things might turn into committees, but there are a number of things that we really do need to get done. And Christian's going to talk about one of them later today, which is revising our policies. And we have many policies, and they're all out of date. So in terms of getting organized for the year, those are the things I wanted to mention. I don't know if there are questions, or I've kind of rattled through a whole bunch of things. I see Ed. I'm not sure if Ed is just smiling or if he's trying to speak.
I was just going to make a attempt at humor that, Jill, you've been busy and you're going to have a busy year.
Yes, I've been busy with things other than this also. And yes, it's going to be a busy year. If there's nothing else, then let's move on to board reports. We have a full list of board reports. They don't all get listed on the agenda. But if we can start with Christian's report. I don't know if there's questions for Christian, or if Christian wants to highlight anything specifically.
Really, hi, Jill. Thank you. I'm very happy to answer any questions, and I know we have a very tight schedule today, so rather than reading over my report, I'll just kind of leave it if folks have questions. I did have one really exciting update, which is that I went before the facilities committee for the legislature, and we were cleared for Pettit. So we got the vote, and we got the commitment from facilities to move forward on Pettit. It's $980,000, I think, for the community room on Pettit. That's a really great success for us. Mark was super helpful, of course, as he always is. Went very smoothly, went unanimously, no hard questions. People were very happy about it. And we'll be going on to Ways and Means, but it was very well received, and I don't anticipate any problems when we get to Ways and Means.
Christian, I'm sorry, can you say the amount again?
I believe it was like 980,000.
950,000.
950. Thank you, Mark. I was thinking 950, 980, and went with optimistic. But thank you, Mark. It was 950.
And is there a architectural plan for that work yet, or what's the 950? What is that? How does that move us forward?
Well, that will be going towards the construction on the project. There's considerable state funding on that as well. I think, again, Mark, correct me, but I think around 350 or 450 from the state, I think. And that will all be, that's all going to be going to making the building built. We have a set of plans that have been drawn up by Han Fan in facilities. She works in facilities. She's a designer and architect who works with facilities. She's worked with us. This is her first major project with us, but she's also been involved in some other conversations. I'd really like to keep her on board and try and have her be developed as kind of our architect in residence at facilities. She does excellent work and really seems to get libraries really well. And I think if we had somebody kind of in-house with the county, that could save us, a lot of hassles and a lot of process. It's a great space. It's going to be a multi-use programming room. It's designed to be flexible and to be used for multiple different purposes. It will has its own small kind of kitchenette. It has bathrooms. Thank you, Amanda. Not $229 total for Pettit from state. So the room will be able to be independent of the branch, so we'll be able to open it while the branch is closed for community conversations and this kind of stuff. It's a very needed space. That branch circulates more materials than any other branch. I think other than Central, it almost circulates more than the rest of the branches combined at times. It was very, very busy during pickup, during library pickup. And I've done programs there. I did a story time there in Children's Room. It was really tight. I went to a magic show that was very well received. Had about 30, 40 kids in the Children's Room, very tight, very not great for a lot of reasons. So not least of which is that you can't access children's materials while any children's programming is going on without disturbing the program. It's going to be a great addition. It is well past time for it, and we're very excited about it. It's gonna go quite well. Carol's been amazing to work with. Hannah's been amazing to work with, and of course, Mark is an incredible rock. And I want to also call out Amanda. She did a great job of kind of scraping up all the crumbs from the state library. They reached out to her and said, hey, we got some extra leftover funds in construction grants. Are you interested? And of course, Amanda was absolutely interested and scraped everything right into this fund. It was exceptional work. So now we're moving forward. It's exciting stuff. I mean, we're still a ways out. We don't, it's not time to break out the golden shovels yet, but we're definitely getting there.
Thank you. Are there drawings that can be shared? Any?
Sure, I'd be happy to send them around to the board. We can't go public with it yet, folks. There's no discussion. You can't post it. You can't show it to your friends because we don't have the funding secured. You know, we still have to go through Ways and Means. We still have to clear that. So there's a lot of excitement around this in the Westcott community. It's been talked about, as to my understanding, it's been talked about in the organization for some time. This is the furthest along we've been able to move this project. So I'm happy to share those drawings, but I would ask that they remain within the space of the board and not be, you know, not really be shared out. Not that you would have a reason to, but until such time as we can officially announce it, we are keeping this one kind of close to the vest. And obviously, we're talking about it in a public meeting, but we're not, you know, we're not banging the drums and calling in the elephants just yet. But I'd be happy to share it out. I can send it out to you guys this afternoon or tomorrow morning. I think probably as easy as. Hey, Maria.
Thank you.
Does anyone have any other questions for me or anything that I can help you out with? Okay, well, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
I do have one question. Sorry, I was slow to respond. Can you talk about the lunch hour concern at all, or?
I mean, that's a personnel issue. I don't know that it's necessarily prevalent to talk about it in an open meeting with the board, but I mean, it's resolved. It was a simple enough issue. The question was whether or not staff had to finish their lunch hour before 2 o'clock or had to start their lunch hour before 2 o'clock. It was an interpretation in the contract, wasn't particularly onerous, doesn't particularly impact a lot of people. But in the end, we decided that we would offer flexibility in the interest of flexibility, but that also hold to a pretty tight, you have to be out to lunch before 2 o'clock because we need staff back, all hands back on deck by 3 o'clock. Typically 3 o'clock is when school's out. It's usually the busiest time of the library. It's when families are coming through, that 3 to 5, 3 to 6 hours is quite busy for us. So we want to make sure that staff are available for that time. Really, it was just kind of two interpretations of language. We talked it through. It's done. Not really a lot. Not really a very complicated issue. Took about, I think, 3 or 4 meetings really at the end of the day.
Thank you. Anything else for Christian? My report is next. Any questions or comments for me? Not hearing any. Amanda Travis sent us a report from the system library directors, the suburban library directors. And I don't know if you have any questions for her. Mandy, you're the only report that I don't have any notes on, so you must have been really clear.
Glad to hear.
The member council, which is a report from Alyssa Ali, has really grown in importance since the MOU. And so both Alyssa and Amanda Shavoli cover things in their reports having to do with the member council. The member council now has, I'm not even sure how many committees that it has spawned in terms of the plan of service. There are people I'm sure here who are in this meeting who are on the various committees, but a lot of work is being done by the committees related to the plan of service, a lot of information gathering, a lot of information sharing. There are also member trustees on some of those committees. And so there'll be, I think, on an ongoing basis, a lot of details in both Alyssa's and Amanda Shavoli's reports that will be important to us going forward. So I don't know if there's anything in Alyssa's report that you have questions about, or in Amanda Shavoli's report. The one thing I noted in Alyssa's report is that the Lafayette Library now has a new director, and that's Jessica Rice. And so that's wonderful. They had an extended search to replace Scott Kushner, but good to have a new director in that library. And Alyssa's not here, is she? I shouldn't say that. No, I don't see Alyssa. Amanda, is there anything that we should note about the member council committees that isn't in your report, or that you want to highlight?
Not that I can think of offhand. If anybody has any questions, please let me know. I know I'm still looking for folks for the trustee advisory committee, but I know we have a representative from the OCPL board on there. So yeah, I think that's only holes I have, but if anyone has questions, please let me know.
Thank you. And Lenore is on one of the committees. I should note that she's on the trustees advisory committee. Okay, in terms of other reports, Dawn gave us a report on branch highlights. I'll note that there's continue to be new hires in the library in OCPL, the city branches. Lots, if you did not read it, there's a lot of good information in her report about what libraries in the city have been doing. A lot of good detail in that report, including quotes and things. So a good one to read. And they're doing things that I had not thought about, including drive-in movies.
Yeah, that was nice.
Yeah. We have a report from the Central Library, that's from Renee, who also includes some statistics in her report. Things seem to be looking up. Becky sent us an operations report.
And so I was concerned about when they talk about medical and when they talk about sexual and verbal abuse and all that. Do you have any training for the employees toward medical or to a debriefing after something like that, that they can take some time out, a few minutes?
So
Becky-
Beck,
oh.
I'm sorry, I'm going to defer to Becky, but yeah, actually, I'm just going to defer to Becky. She and I.
Thanks, Etta, for the question. We, after any kind of incident, I call and I talk to any of the staff that were involved, and just to kind of give them a chance to discuss what happened. Most of the medical ones involve somebody needing an ambulance called for them. Not so much that we have to provide any medical services, which is good because that would not be good. But we do definitely talk to every staff member after any incident and get them any kind of support if they feel like they need to talk to anybody. We have a really great county EAP, and we do try to support staff as much as we can.
Okay.
Does that answer your question, Etta?
Yes, yes. I was thinking like every company sometimes they have somebody like is trained in CPR or trained in first aid, just in case something happened in any building. That's what I was thinking about it.
Gotcha. We don't have that. We are thinking about maybe getting AEDs for the libraries, but not that kind of CPR training. We mostly would just call an ambulance in that case.
Okay.
It's certainly, it's very reasonable questioning, and I think we could probably do some mental health first aid training, which I think would be really appropriate for us both as a way of coping with some of the stuff as well as dealing with some of it. We do offer staff Narcan training, which is, how to help people who are having overdoses. The problem with CPR and that kind of thing is that while we can offer it, we can't require it. This is, nobody signs up to be a librarian to then be a kind of ersatz EMT, you know what I mean? So people who are interested in it, we can definitely offer it to them and make sure that they have those supports and stuff. But I'm not, I'm not going to say like everybody's got to get CPR trained or first training.
No,
trained
no.
or
It's
anything
somebody
like
who
that.
volunteer. It's a volunteer basis or something like that. That's
Yeah,
how it
which I think is great. And I'd love to expand that. And I'd love to give those people some more opportunities that way. And it would be great to give our CET staff members some new opportunities as well. They're not really our staff members, they're a partner organization, but they've worked really well with us on a number of issues. And I think looping them into some trainings would, in interest of my colleague Becky, I think that would work fairly well, but we can kind of explore that as we go forward.
Okay. Thank you.
Great question. Thank you. I always find that those statistics, Becky, to be intriguing and depressing and all the emotions when I look at those statistics. So,
So is that a reflection of what's going on? I was, mental for a lot of people.
I think we're still down in numbers though, which I hold a lot of hope for. I've certainly seen rough times at libraries, and I think that we're doing quite well. I think Becky's leadership has been great, and I think we're entering a new stage of kind of stability with our security issues. They're never going to go away, but I think we've managed to move in front of them a little bit instead of being reactive to them, which I want to commend Becky for doing.
It's all on the CET. And I did, I think, mention in my report that we had a lot of incidents that maybe could have gone in a certain way that didn't. And so they stayed on some of the lower levels of impact, which to me shows that things are happening. They're just being handled in an appropriate, good de-escalating way. So I'm happy.
That's good.
thank you. Moving on, I believe we did have a report from finance. Two finance reports. So Mark delivered what I think are year-end 2021 numbers. Is that correct, Mark?
Those are preliminary year end. They don't close. We're still running 2021's books until the actual, like the end of this month. So the books will probably be closed the end of February. So, you can take those with a grain of salt because we're still processing invoices that we get for 2021, for the rest of this week. We're still submitting POs or invoices that come in. So I won't have any real year-end stuff until beginning of like March. But it, kind of gives you a preliminary idea of where we are.
Thank you. I could tell from some of the amounts that were left that everything hadn't yet gone through.
Yes, because they still got to process any departmentals and some of the personnel costs and what have you. So but it gives us a good kind of first look.
Any questions from Mark about his finance report? I always look at Ed, but I don't see any questions.
No,
from
I
Ed.
think it's good. I mean, obviously, the biggest thing that's underspent is going to happen in the next month, which is the interdepartmental charges, and that's out of our control. That's something that comes from the 14th floor. That's the fringe benefits, retirement, all those things, as well as other interdepartmental charges. But generally speaking, it looks like we're in pretty decent shape at this point. Also, though, Jill, could we go back to member service? Did you
Sure.
did you talk about that? I didn't hear it. The only thing I wanted to bring up was I'd like to, I don't expect an answer today, but I'd like to understand what the condition and mileage and all those things are on our vehicles, since we're so deep, the system, the entire system is so dependent on delivery. I don't know when the last time it is we replace one of those vans, but I think we at least like to know next month where they stand. And maybe it's something we have to look into for the 2023 budget, or maybe there's another way to finance it this year if there's fund balance, but it's critical to our delivery, and I want to be sure we're on top of it. A few years ago, we had a meeting in December and it was snowing like crazy, and the announcement was made, we're not going to deliver because we don't have our snow tires on. This was like mid-December. And my first reaction was, if you've lived in Syracuse for at least one winter, you know that by December 15th, you ought to have your snow tires on. But it turned out when we looked into it that in fact, they don't even put snow tires on. They use a kind of an aggressive tread year round. So I don't know what the real excuse was for not delivering, but it wasn't that we didn't put the snow tires on, but it's also true that these vehicles from time to time are laid up for a period of longer than we'd want, more than just an oil change. And there's just too much riding on it. So my plea is for next month to get a status of those vehicles.
That won't be a problem, Ed. We have to submit mileage with the vehicles with the budget every year. So we have a sheet that we can share with you.
Yeah, the year of the vehicle, the mileage, and maybe, I don't know if is it
And any
WEP
recent
that
repairs.
still does the maintenance. If they've got any special report on the condition of the vehicles, that would be helpful.
Yes, they do still do that. We just put a transmission in one of them last year. So we'll get that to you.
Excellent, thank you.
Hey, Ed, actually Amanda's got some updates on those in her report. I know it's not what you're looking for, but there's a mention of one going in for an oil change, another one going in for some service on just kind of a
Right, that's what reminded
me.
me. Yeah, that's what
Good enough. I
reminded
just
me.
want to make sure you're getting some updates in there, but we'll give you a full report. Yes, sir.
Yep, no, I saw it. Thank you.
And also a good reminder that things like that are important for all of us to think about as we work on the following year's budget. That we think about what needs to be replaced in terms of vehicles and other things. So Ed, thank you for that reminder. The other finance report is from the Finance Committee. It's about trustee funds. I don't know if Christina has anything she wants to say. I do have one comment, but I'll let Christina go first.
So why don't you go ahead first? Took me a minute to unmute, so I'm a little bit behind the 8 ball here. Go ahead.
That's okay. So Christina and Ed have been working on trustee funds, understanding what funds we have and what their limitations are in terms of use. And I think the one thing that's come out of the discussions is that there are some limitations on some of the funds currently, and we need to understand what the limitations are. But the other is that these funds do not grow quickly. And so if you think about the stock market report on TV, and you see how the stock market goes up, and it can go up quite quickly, the way our funds are invested, they're invested to be stable, and they do not increase quickly. And so that was for me, that was a really important takeaway from the work that Christina and Ed have done on the funds.
So what I would like to say, and then perhaps Ed would like to chime in, is the committee met, and it was really good to have some new folks on the committee who raised some questions that some of us had maybe taken previous guidance for gospel. So we're looking at whether or not there are opportunities where we can use some of these dollars to have a broader impact for the library system. And because as Jill mentioned, some of these gifts are not significant in value and earn almost nothing. In fact, in some years, we can actually have a slightly negative return because of fees that we're required to pay on the safekeeping of the assets in accordance with the New York State guidelines for the safekeeping of such dollars. So it's an important look that we want to do. And then our plan is to come before the board to review line by line a detail of these so everyone can understand, but also so that we can speak about what the best use for these are, because some of them do have specific restrictions, such as genealogy or a particular branch. And so we can sort of make a long range plan to really have the most impact.
Ed?
Is there anything you want to add to that?
Just real quick. I think one of the most important, I like what everything's been said. What I'm not satisfied first though, that there isn't something between where we are now with the money and where we could put it safely and still earn a little bit better return. So that's something we're looking at. One. The other is very important to know that except for one large gift, it was a bequest, an insurance from an insurance claim that someone had passed away that used to work for the county social services. Except for that, so many of these were given during the SPL days. In fact, the most significant, if you're looking at constant dollars, was given in 1908 in honor of Ezekiel Mundy, who was the library director at the time. And so we want to be prudent about how we spend the money because it took so long to accumulate, so many years. And but we do want to establish some priorities and be able to put it to good use for the benefit of the staff and the library and the people of Onondaga County. So you'll hear more, painfully more than you want to probably in the future.
Thank you,
It's an
Christina.
it's an interesting exercise. So we look forward to involving everyone.
So Ed, Christina, and Tim are the finance committee. And I want to thank them for their attention to detail, because these are, with these gifts, the details really do matter. And Ed has gone back through the details on these gifts. I think he probably time traveled back to 1908 just to find out what Mundy was thinking about. The only other report, which is not a written report, but I believe Angela Bernat
Yes, thank you. Thank you for giving me a few minutes here today, Jill. You all will be getting a report from Kim next month on the spring season. You know that we have finished a very successful fall season with the Gifford Author Series, and I just wanted to maybe update you on some of the different things we're doing. And from what I understand, there may be a few newer members of the board who might not really understand everything that Focal does. I mean, obviously our mission, Focal's main mission, is to support our libraries and also to present the Gifford Author Series. And Ed, Ed is the Focal historian, and any comments you would want to make, I would appreciate, and Kim also. But this is our 27th season. We have been very, very successful in bringing authors who world-class authors and have been lauded as the premier lecture series in the country. For many, many years, we have been fortunate, and the library has been fortunate to receive donations from Focal based mainly on our author series. And we've, at times have had, close to 1,000 subscribers. Well, those days are changing, not just for Focal, but for all organizations, be it Symphoria or Syracuse Stage, where people are not subscribing the way they used to. So, we're kind of at a crossroads, and we're trying to figure out how we can continue to support you, the libraries, and to be a community resource. Just in case some of you may not understand or know this, in addition to doing the actual lectures on the evening of the lectures, we do what are called outreaches, and we have a contract with each of the authors. Our contracts with each of the authors include the author meeting with a smaller group within the community the day of the actual lecture. For example, with Jason Reynolds, a group of 5th graders from Martin Luther King School met with Jason at Beecham Library. And Yad Jassy met with a group of students at Lemoyne. When Amor Tolles was here, his book was The Gentleman from Moscow. So we had a tea at the Hotel Syracuse in the lobby. So we try to do, in addition to the actual author series lectures, we try to do something else. So what do I really want to tell you today is that we're going through some change. With the pandemic. Well, first of all, we were very, very fortunate that when the pandemic hit, we also were blessed with Kim, being able to hire Kim, who helped us get through the pandemic in an amazing fashion through our video lectures. We also were very fortunate in that my predecessor as the board chair of Focal, Peggy Fabick, asked for a grant from the state, $100,000 grant from New York State, which with the help of Representative Pamela Hunter, we were able to get. So we have been allocated $100,000 for 2 purposes, one of which is to increase our capacity for capacity building. What you probably don't realize, and what will amaze you, is that we have 2 part-time people, a 30-hour Kim and a 20-hour a minute administrative person. So with 50 hours a week, we present this amazing Gifford Author Series. But we now have $100,000 to improve our capacity and to extend our reach in the community. So initially what we did, and Christian was a part of this past summer, we had a brainstorming session with Angela Douglas, who, we spent several hours trying to figure out ways in which we could do things differently and be better and find new ways to support the library. An offshoot of that is that we decided to use a small amount of the $100,000 to to hire Stillwork Consulting, Heidi Holz, to help us through relooking at our mission and to do a lifestyle assessment for us. So Heidi started working with us just a couple of weeks ago, and we are rethinking our mission, the mission of Focal, looking at ways in which we can better support the library. The library itself will be brought into this exercise at some point. Starting in March, we will be doing a lifestyle assessment, actually assessing what Focal does, what we can be doing better, what we can be doing differently, what maybe we shouldn't be doing, all with the hope of being able to better support our libraries and realistically to be able to provide more funding to our libraries. So I just thought it was important that you understand what we're doing and how much we are interested in supporting you in the best way we possibly can, and our community. So Ed, Kim, any comments you would like to make?
Angela, I just want you to know I have 2 large banker's boxes full of files of Focal authors. If you ever want to borrow it.
Thanks.
With photographs, and I mean it's a great story, and I used to keep a great record on every author, but I got writer's cramp after a while, so I haven't done it quite as thoroughly, but someday I'd be glad to drop them off at your house if you promise to take good care of them.
Okay, thank you.
Angela, thank you. And so you kept saying lifestyle, you're doing some lifestyle analysis, but I think you meant
Life cycle, I'm sorry, and I say life cycle style, well, yeah, life cycle assessment we're going to be doing.
No, that's fine. It was just like, yeah, lifestyle. What's the Focal lifestyle? So, and we should note that the lecture started up again in March. And so 1 in March, 1 in April, 1 in May. Any questions for Angela? Angela, thank you. I think that's all the reports. Christian, you're next on the agenda to talk with us about policies.
Jill, thank you so much for having me today. So I wanted to touch base with folks about policies, about board level policies. I shared a document with all of you, which it's a spreadsheet. It has all of the policies. There's some stuff in there that aren't policies, a couple of things. There's still high level things that you folks should be aware of as board members. So, the copyright statement, there's a thing here in the path to excellence, which was a big deal and was presented to the board in the past. That's still kind of on the records. So it's all kind of spread in there. I've got, the review dates, pretty much as Jill says, pretty much everything really needs to be reviewed. We have a new MOU, so we're up to date on that, which is exciting. But hey, I'll take it. It's a place to start. Some of this stuff goes back to 2011, 2014. So, I think we can get started on our cycle on it. Typically the process as it stands per board policy development resolution 1831 enacted on 11/14/2018. The board policy is that, I would bring policies that would need to be revised to you. And then the board discusses it at that board meeting. And then there's kind of a month of time for reflection. And then then you'll meet about it again and make a vote the following month. So, if I say, hey, let's make a radical change to board policy 1831, we're still sitting on it for a month before we actually vote on that. Or you're still sitting on that for a month before you vote on it. Jill and I have talked about it. I think Jill has some thoughts that maybe we could do some other stuff in there. I would like to see how this process as a process goes, but that's the process as it stands. Right now, the main things that I would bring out, and Jill, I don't know if you want to discuss that now, or if you want to discuss some of the policies that I'm interested in making plays with at this point. But
Can I
There's some-
just jump in for a
Sure.
second and say,
Yep.
We see the policies twice,
Yep.
but before we see them, staff works on the policies. So they may need to be updated. They would work on the updates to the policies. There might be some policies that might have to go to county law
Mhm.
for a wording review. And so, as Christian and I have talked about, this is not just a short process. This is a multiple month process for one policy. And so we can't clearly do all of them at once, but we will need to get through all of them in some sort of an order. So I just wanted to note that. Thank you.
Yeah,
Chris.
now Gail has worked up a calendar, kind of a cycle for boards in the past to work through these things on a regular basis. I think it's kind of been aspirational, but I'm certainly happy to jump back onto it. And Gail and I have talked about that as well. For me, I've got some easy stuff that I think we could probably throw out into the conversation right now and start some conversations about possible things that are a little bit outdated and sunsetted, and some things that need to be reviewed as boilerplate, if this is a space that we can have that quick conversation. There is a policy, the community profiles policy. This is if you just run down the alphabetical list, communities profile policy. This was a policy that was put in place for Polaris, our integrated library software. It was a means of kind of creating some community profiles. It never really went very far from what I'm told. And we no longer use it. It's no longer a function that we use. So my recommendation would be that the board just sunset that and take that out of our policy book. There's an old MOU. I think we've officially replaced it, but if we have not officially replaced it with the new MOU, my recommendation would be that we do that as soon as possible. There's an older document, Path to Excellence. This was dated from 2009. It's a good document, but it's also very out of date. And while it makes some recommendations for some other documents and some other policies that we might use that are pretty solid, and I plan to mine it for that, I think that document itself would probably need to pull out of circulation. Again, it's more than a dozen years out of best practice or out of kind of contemporary practice. The only one that I could see really being contentious in what we're discussing is the public comment policy, which is resolution 1119. This was put in place in 2011. And it's just no longer followed as practice. It's the idea that if somebody from the public wants to come and speak to a meeting of the Board of Trustees of OCPL, that they have to submit, a request to speak ahead of time, that they have to do, follow these kind of standards. We're just really not doing that. And if anything, it seems to be that we're kind of encouraging more dialogue, not less. And so I would recommend that we just sunset that policy, that we not renew it or update it in any way. And then there's a form that is dependent on it, which is called the intent to speak form. It's a corollary of that policy. So if we pull down that policy, then the corollary will come down kind of automatically. And then there's just a couple of boilerplate policies, which is copyright and website terms and conditions. I don't actually know when that language was last reviewed, but I think we should probably do a pass on it just to make sure that it's current with best practices and that kind of stuff. So, I think just that would be an easy start, is that we sunset some deadwood and then look at some boilerplates. And then next month we can vote on those. So you can vote on those. And we can bring forward some more refined responses. In my spreadsheet, you'll notice in the notes, there's some pretty detailed responses to a lot of these things. A lot of these things are things that I'm going to want to have the Office of Diversity review for us for language to make sure that we're in good shape. There's a couple of stuff, there's some stuff in here that maybe is a little outdated in how it approaches teens. So it's pretty nuanced mostly at this point after this first round of easy stuff.
So Christian, you're suggesting that we review the community profiles policy, path to excellence, and public comment policy. And then vote next month to sunset them.
Yes.
Okay. Sam, you have your hand up.
Yeah, thanks for the overview. I think the main question that I have is a question of prioritization. Doesn't sound like there's anything that's legally necessary, but just in terms of, there's a lot of things that need to be reviewed. So any thoughts on what should come first? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would probably pull out, I have a couple of policies which I think would be new policies that I think we should address before we start getting to some of this older stuff, because nothing is particularly broken other than the stuff that I've listed for you. But I do think we should pull out our materials challenge policy. Currently that resides in the collection management policy, which was written in 1995. We did a review of that, I think, last month, and found that it's still pretty solid policy. It works. But given what's going on, given everything that's going on, I think it would be best if we reviewed it, had a reviewed in 2022 kind of stamp on it, and then had it independent of this very detailed, very complicated collection management policy that it's kind of nested in currently. It's also not really available digitally except as part of that larger document. So my recommendation would be that we pull that out. And that's one of the things that I'd like to bring to the group for next month so that we could start moving forward on it. A policy that isn't necessary, we are covered, but I think it's good policy, is services to vulnerable adults. This can be people who have developmental delay. These can be people who are, perhaps, trafficking victims, people, including people with addictions. I mean, if somebody's completely zonked out, they are a vulnerable person, right? So I think that having some policies in place about how we deal with vulnerable adults, they're already covered by our general policy. Dignity is kind of baked into how we approach our patrons, but it's not the worst thing idea to do a call out for it. And then this gets to what you're saying about maybe we could start doing some specified training about what you do if somebody's passed out, what you do if somebody's having developmental delay and they're having a cognitive moment. What do you do with somebody with autism who's having a self-destructive fit? These kinds of things, which wouldn't necessarily be every single librarian, but at least some kind of rules of thumb that we would be able to go by and be able to use. I have a personal thing about tutors' use of the library. I don't know if it's comes to a policy thing or if it's just a procedures thing where I would write it. I love having tutors in the library. I think tutors are wonderful. I just feel very strongly that they should not be behind a closed door alone with the student, no matter what their relationship is. And that's just something I would codify into either a procedure or policy, depending on what our best practices are around that. Again, no disrespect to any tutors. I've never had any problems with a tutor, but we would never allow an adult and a child that they do not have guardianship over to go into a private space behind a closed door under any other circumstances. And I'm not entirely comfortable with it under those circumstances. Those are kind of the easy low-hanging fruit, Sam, of things that I would just throw out there. And then, I mean, going through the list, I'd appreciate your feedback. There's stuff in here where it's like, I don't even know if this is still a policy. There's some things that no changes are recommended. Maybe we could just take a look at those and cycle those out to check them off and move through as well. So if you look through, I mean, and some of it's going to be a lot, some of it's just going to be a lot harder than others. The meeting room policies have been breaking the backs of library boards for the last couple of years, because you need to be welcoming and inclusive, but you kind of need to work in, it's called the no Nazis clause. It's like a no hate groups clause. And you need to kind of phrase it in a certain way so that you're not impinging on the rights and concepts of the library. That's a very easy argument. Yes, Nazis have a right to say whatever they say, but they don't have to say it in a library where my staff feel threatened. And that really is kind of the breaking point of these kinds of conversations, but it's nuanced. I personally find our meeting room policy to have a lot of very anti-teen, anti-young and emerging adult language. I would want to change that. I want to change who gets a library card. I think you get a library card at birth. That's something we'll probably have arguments about. So, I think that in that way, I would love to get some feedback. Again, I'm just kind of throwing up the easy outs at the moment for us to start having it cycle through so that when we look at enacted dates, it's, 2022, 2022, 2022, and not, 2013, 2011, 2013, 2014 on cycles that are supposed to be done on a 3-year cycle.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think when we sort of set out a plan for it, saying these are the easy things that we should just sort of refresh or put the new date on there as modified or reviewed by, great, like let's do that, as soon as possible. And then also just making sure that we're sort of plugging in, the stuff that might take a year to review, like let's start now rather than start in 6 months. So that's great. And then the last question that I had is, so just to clarify, what in the document that you sent, is that's not a comprehensive list of policies? It's the ones that you are recommending have some change. Is that right? Like, does
I'm
a
not sure
comprehensive list of the
I actually
thousands of
sent
policies
2
out there?
documents. You should have 2 documents. One is, well, I think there are 2 documents out there, and one is a spreadsheet.
Yes.
Got
And
that
then,
one.
I saw that one.
and then I had worked up a document. I guess it didn't make it out to you folks, but I can send it out after the meeting. I'll send it out in the morning, which just kind of details the stuff that I'm just talking about. It's a policy tracking spreadsheet narrative. It's a 2-page narrative that lays out all the stuff that I want to sunset, the stuff that I'd recommend, and maybe some stuff that we would maybe think about for the next thing. Also just explains the spreadsheet a little bit. But no, Sam, as it stands, those are the board policies. Now, of course, we got a million procedures, but those are the official board policies that are the lifeblood of OCPL.
Great.
So,
Okay, perfect.
and the one thing to note, so first of all, thank you for that explanation about policies and the process and sunsetting. The one thing to note is that there are other policies that govern OCPL, but they're county policies. And so anything that is personnel related, and I'm using that term kind of broadly, would be county policies. And so if you think about a whistleblower policy, that's a county policy. So there's many other policies that staff abide by. They're county policies. What Christian has in the spreadsheet are the policies that are our purview as the board for OCPL.
So just to note, not everything in there is officially a policy. Some of them are guidance and guidelines per se, but but there's still kind of high level guidelines that you guys should be aware of, or back in 1994 should have been aware of, as the case may be.
Perfect. Thanks for all that.
I think the other thing I'll just note that has happened in the last couple of years is really thinking about diversity and inclusion, accessibility, equity. And so those are things I hope that will kind of come to bear as we look at the policies. Policies can unknowingly be racist. And so having kind of that lens as you look at policies, I think will be important given the age that we're in, and ensuring true inclusiveness of policies.
Just as a heads up on that too, there's a lot of work that's been done on transgendered policy, or policies that are friendly to transgendered individuals and our transgender patrons and population. It's subtle things like not having people's dead names in their library card numbers, making sure that gender isn't a classification, which it's not for us. People don't have to go through a lot of hoops, to get their dead name changed out and that kind of thing. But if we're not careful about it, it's stuff that can be very challenging for folks who are going through that. So I want to make sure that we're as ahead on that as we can be.
Thank you. So I look forward to the policies that you mentioned that we might review next month. I look forward to us receiving them, and they can come earlier than the pre-read, so we have time to kind of really look at them.
Yeah, Jill, I'm going to send them out to you tomorrow.
Okay.
I've got them prepared in a document, so I'll just drop them in the mail. I'll drop them an email tomorrow.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so the last thing on our agenda is Katie Hayduk. So we've been doing these staff presentations, and Katie's there. She is on the screen. Katie, it's all yours.
Okay, I'll be very, very fast because I know we all want to get out of here. But
You
I
don't,
am
you don't, you don't have to speed up.
okay, I'll try not to. But I'm Katie Kaduk. I'm the manager of acquisitions, and I've also been taking a little bit more of a role in tech services. I've been here in OCPL for just about 16 years now. I started as an LA in the children's world here at Central Library, became a YA librarian, and then I moved to Beecham Branch. That's where I met you, Mr. Cochin, for Light a Candle for Literacy. And I like to say that's where I learned how much I love being a librarian. I was stepping outside of my comfort zone there at Beecham and doing story times and a lot of community engagement. I was there for a few years before I moved on to White Branch Library, which was probably the best opportunity I ever received. Getting to work, hands down, greatest branch manager, Renata Dunsmore. She was super supportive and really helpful in guiding me and challenging me and pushing me in so many ways. And I was very lucky. She helped me to love the Northside community. And I had such a hard time leaving there after 5.5 years. But I went over to Payne Branch, and that was a promotion to branch manager. It was short-lived, but that's okay. I was there for about 9 months before I was put into the position that I am in now. I took over from Barbara Giardina, who was fantastic and still to this day helps me out whenever I have a question. So I'm very lucky to have such a supportive staff like this. So what do I do here? The fun part, I get to handle our acquisitions and purchasing in our centralized collection. I oversee a total of 5 selectors, including myself. I order adult fiction materials for the central and branches. It's very fun. I enjoy it. It's the best part of my job. I do miss doing a lot of the public service and the customer service, which I thought I was very good at, but I get to kind of transfer that over here into this, working with a lot of vendors, sales reps, things like that. I also handle a lot of our digital services, including e-content materials, administrator for Overdrive. So if you guys have any questions with that stuff, I'm the person to go to with it. Big change for me was handling materials and money. That was completely brand new for me. Huge challenge because, you know, I came into this in January of 2020, right before the pandemic, and then seeing our 2021 budget get completely demolished and materials budget, and trying to recover from that. But one of my goals in this position is however long I stay here, hopefully a very long time, I want to see our materials budget hit that $1 million mark. We were lucky to get reinstated to the materials budget that we were at in 2020, but prices aren't what they were in 2020, as we all know. Everything has gone up. And I really want to work hard in trying to advocate for that. But quickly, I get to work with Mark Carter a lot. He has been so phenomenal in helping me understand this money language that I knew nothing about, and help to guide me in working with the county. So we've been able to learn all these new definitions that I knew nothing. And I also get to work with Dr. Dane Dahl, and he's helped teach me a lot about tech services and include me in things in Polaris that I never knew very much about, but I'm becoming more familiar with each day. And that's about it for me. If you guys ever have any questions or anything else, just reach out, let me know.
Thank you.
Ed, I see your hand up.
Jill, 2 things. First of all, Katie Hayduke is such an asset to our library. And I do remember her at Beecham, but also she was very innovative in the short time she was at Payne, going out one summer and getting vendors to offer gifts for students and readers and so forth when they came into the library. And so it's great for her to be elevated, but I'm sure she would be missed in any branch library. And but it reminds me of one thing, Katie, if this would be helpful for you to pass to us through Christian or Mark. You talked about the materials budget, and if you could describe for us let's say the average price of a book now compared to, let's say, 5 years ago, that would be helpful for us to, I love lobbying legislators, and if I have that kind of material in hand with some of the stuff we're working on with the committee Amanda's overseeing, that could be very useful to us. So I'd appreciate it.
You got it, Ed. Consider it done.
Any other questions for Katie? Katie, I have one question. So when you purchase a book for the library, how many copies do you normally, averagely purchase?
When I first started here, especially the top bestsellers here at Central, we always would purchase 2 copies, and naturally each of the branches would receive 1 copy. 2021, we definitely had to cut back on that and be way more selective, especially for our Central location. So currently now it's working off of, I try to supply everybody with anybody's requests. I work off of holds lists. All of our vendors provide a lot of great online services that we take advantage of. So, and I'll be honest too, another thing that I've been doing is going out and speaking with each of the branches and discovering and figuring out what they really want there. So I'm usually working with everyone and anyone to try to figure it out, but everyone's going to receive a bestseller naturally. Those top high holds lists, things like that. Hopefully that answers it, Jill.
So when you said 2 copies, did you mean 2 copies per branch or 2 copies total?
2 copies for Central and 1 for each branch location.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Yeah. No, that's okay.
I understood. Thank you.
You're
Yeah,
welcome.
it's interesting because I think you don't always realize, when you purchase how many copies you really have to purchase. And some books you might purchase a lot of for some bestsellers, whereas there might be other things that you purchase, maybe not even 1 for every branch. So
Right.
it really varies.
Yeah, each location has a different, population and a different feel, and it's trying to figure them all out, which can be difficult at times. So I really do rely on the help of all the branches, and truthfully, all the staff are awesome in vocalizing and helping out with that.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments for Katie?
Thank you, everybody.
I appreciate getting to know what everyone is doing. So Christian, thank you for arranging these. Much appreciated. So I believe we're at the end of the agenda. I do want to note one thing, and that is, you may have noticed that we have live transcriptions now. I have them turned on, and the live transcription service actually works pretty well. There are some things it doesn't understand, but you can guess usually pretty well what the transcription was trying to hear. But this is something we can do. This is something that's being done in meetings, broadly speaking, to make them more accessible. And even if you are someone who has good hearing, sometimes the transcription still helps because you missed something, you didn't understand what the person said, you were distracted. You can always pull up the transcript, scroll back through, and see what happened. Dane told me that the transcript is captured along with the recording, so that's also good to know. Probably helpful for Gail.
Yes.
Anything else? Christian, anything from you? Other board members? Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Ed, thank you. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Tim, thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Bye.
Aye. Any opposed? Anybody want to stay longer? Any abstentions? Thank you. It's 5:13 and we are done. Thank you for the meeting.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.